Every Disney Lorcana set tells a story, but Whispers in the Well takes us deeper than ever before, underground beneath the Great Illuminary. There's an entire world that we've yet to explore, where magical ink shimmers in the darkness. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how the art, look, design, and feel of the set came to be with somebody who's intimately familiar with it. Art director Edgar Pasten is the creative set lead for Whispers in the Well, and he's going to give us a little bit of a behind-the-scenes look at how the look and the feel of this set came to be, how his team created this haunting world, and how to blend the darker edges of storytelling with Disney's signature warmth. There's some really fascinating details in here. Let's dive in. But really quickly, before we dive into the look and feel of Whispers in the Well, I think it's important to take a quick moment to understand what Edgar's role in the process is. What is he doing as the set lead to set the tone for the set? Well, he described it in a bit more detail, but basically, Edgar builds the sandbox that everybody else gets to play in.
The biggest hurdle as a set lead is to create the vision, creating a world guide that both the artists and the art directors can follow. So it's really kind of pathing out the direction for the set in general, setting the mood from an early standpoint, letting them know what environments are going to be included. I have to build the sandbox, and then I let them play with all the toys once it's built.
So now that we understand Edgar's role, let's talk about the look and feel and tone of Whispers in the Well. It's definitely darker, more moody, more noir-esque than previous sets have been, and this is for a few reasons. One of them is because they've introduced 3 new darker franchises into the world of Lorcana all in this set, with the Headless Horseman, Gargoyles, and the Black Cauldron. But it's bigger than that. The set's moodier tone is also influenced by these new areas that they've introduced into the world of Lorcana with the Inkwell Caverns and the Bitterwood. And the introduction of these new franchises and these new areas really go hand in hand, because the new spookier areas that also still have a Lorcana vibe serves as kind of a bridge to bring in these darker franchises into the world of Lorcana and make it less jarring.
It definitely does have a moodier feel to it, and that's of course by design, right? We wanted to take the viewer along on a ride somewhere they hadn't been before within Lorcana and explore some of those newer areas that we're creating specifically because we wanted to make it an easier transition for those more edgy franchises that we're introducing in this set.
So these new areas that are being introduced into the world of Lorcana and Whispers in the Well, including the Inkwell Caverns, are so important to the mood, the look, and the feel of the set. And so a lot of time and attention and care goes into crafting them. Edgar talks a lot about how he thinks of them as independent biomes, but also independent characters with their own personality and mood.
Yeah, I always attack those sorts of assignments with keeping in mind or thinking of them as characters. Each one of these environments, I always think of them as biomes, right? They're a biome of their own, and what kind of personality do they have? I really truly think of them as a character, and they do appear as kind of a background character in a lot of these cards, and they play a very special part, right? It's the sort of the set dressing that goes into these environments is just as important as the character that's going into them from a storytelling aspect.
Another thing about these locations and biomes in Whispers in the Well are they're helping to guide us through the narrative and the story of the set. Throughout this interview, Edgar drops little breadcrumbs about how there are all sorts of details hidden in plain sight that we just can't see yet. You're going to hear a little bit of that here.
Because we're telling a story with the character and they're posing, but now the background is playing they're giving that assist, I should say, just by existing, right? Just by looking at them in that context, you start to see that there's a little bit more narrative, and you start looking further back and you start to explore more of that world. And they're very carefully placed. The characters are very carefully placed in these locations to, again, kind of bring you into the world and kind of usher you in and through that storyline.
Here's the thing, you can tell that Edgar and the creative team are super excited about the narrative in this set and all the little breadcrumbs that are hidden, I'm sure, in plain sight that fans have yet to discover. So get out your magnifying glasses and take a look, because we want to know what you think is going on here. Edgar gave another nod to the narrative when I asked him about another location in the set, which is really part of the Inkwell Caverns, but it's the Bitterwood. The Bitterwood is a creepy, spooky underground forest that exists alongside or in the Inkwell Caverns, and it was kind of hidden from us until the end of reveal season when we saw cards from the Headless Horseman for the first time. I find the Bitterwood such a creepy, cool location, and it's also pretty important in the narrative that they're telling in this set.
Yeah, it's a wonderful location that Rafal Washtinik, was one of our ADs, helped to create. He really spearheaded that look and took some very basic information from me. I said, I want this to be inside of a cavern, and I'm in love with the idea of the stalactites and stalagmites coming together to form. I got really nerdy with my research on this. They're stalactites, I believe they're called, if I'm remembering correctly, where they basically touch and create this column. And I said, it would be amazing if that was what the trees were. They're not real trees, but they look like trees. So the general public is going to think, they're trees, But internally, the way that we're dealing with them is they're basically stalactites that have formed. And you start to see that there's actually a world above that, and there's like a layer above that, and you start to see that. I would say probably with I forget the name of the wolves, the Arashka and Kila. You start to see that in those, and there's a different vibe going on up there that you don't get in the Bitterwood. And there's also other sections that we involved that we're tying into one another. You start to see that with the bridge from the Headless Horseman. You start to see something back there. Wait, what is that? And Hades has a castle in the background that you can kind of see, but it's all it's also within the Bitterwood. But you start to see some of those locations, and the way that we worked on these, you can at least from my point of view, you can actually set them up in the way that we set up that world. So it's like we put them on a map and literally said, okay, this is the angle, so you're going to see this in the background. And it's very important to me that you're able to see that, because again, that plays a role in how the narrative rolls out within the set.
The Inkwell Caverns are new, the Bitterwood is new, but something else that's new in Whispers in the Well is, of course, the Whisper Glimmers. And this is where learning about the art and design of these characters can be so cool sometimes, because let's talk about the Whisper Glimmers. So when you see Whisper Glimmers in static artwork, they're of course presented as half-formed, with like ethereal bits making up the parts of their bodies that aren't there. Now there's a temptation to think of the parts of them that are formed and not formed as static. That is, if a Whisper Glimmer is presented without legs, they just float along with the top half of their body formed and their bottom not. But that is not the case. In fact, Whisper Glimmers are presented with the parts of their body that they're actually using for some particular action. So in reality, what's actually happening is the part of the Glimmer that's fully formed in the artwork are the pieces of their body they're using at that particular time for a particular action. And this can change and morph over time. So if a specific Glimmer is running, their feet may be formed while their upper torso is smoke. But if they stop to do something with their upper body, that can change. And so Whisper Glimmers are actually these amorphous shapes moving and shifting as different parts of their body are being used. And this is a much different image and a much different being than one that is just static with partially formed and not formed parts. It's just super cool.
Yeah, there's always a formula for these things, and the wonderful thing again is the support that we as set leads enjoy here. In this case, I relied heavily on two industry legends. John Lauren and Aubrey helped to bring this to reality. Obviously, we had an idea of where we wanted to take these characters and these types of characters, but really seeing how they started to implement some of the direction that I was giving helped me to create that formula and help to spread the word to other artists. So once we nail it down, part of my job is to synthesize that information and say, well, we're going to have only the parts of the body that are being used for the mechanic. For instance, if the character is running, you'll see their front leg more formed than the rest of their body, right? The back of them is kind of streaming away because they're not using their maybe their back or their back leg as much as the front leg, or wherever the mechanic is pointing to, that's where we keep that sort of 30 to 40% of the character that is fully formed. And you can start to see that in the images. We also have an inner glow that we add to all of them. And that, again, it's all by design, because we wanted to get that sort of going to a Spectre side of things, but not a scary, ghoulish Spectre. And the way that we did that was also, again, a brilliant method of getting there. John Lauren said, what if we add some additional colors here, some complementary colors, and make sure that they pop and that there's some light coming from within. So it's kind of like they are the light source, and they are spreading that light as they move along. And then the shape language trailing behind them just kind of gave it that last little chef's kiss touch. I'm always dreaming about, like, if we ever made an animation of this, what would it look like, right? And I imagine this thing holistically from that 3D standpoint. How would it look? How would it appear? How would it move? And that's how we approach these glimmers, in that sense of as they're moving, these are the parts that are going to be visible and that are going to be more solidified because of this reasoning, right? There's always it's always grounded in some sort of reality for us, at least. A Disney reality, if you will.
Now, of course, we have to talk a little bit about Enchanteds. If you've been playing for even a little bit, you've probably noticed that the design, the style, and the aesthetic of Enchanteds changes from set to set. And this is because the creative team uses Enchanteds to really push the narrative, the theme, and the flavor of each particular set. So, for example, in Ursula's Return, the Enchanteds were made to look like they were in Ursula's cauldron as she was peering in and divining perhaps which glimmer she was going to entangle next. In Azurite Sea, a seafaring and explorer set, they looked like the pages from a sketchbook where Illumineers were sketching glimmers and scenes that they saw. Well, it turns out with Whispers in the Well, the idea was to push this spooky and this scary aesthetic just a little bit further.
Yeah, I think the way that we tend to look at Enchanteds are a way to extend that narrative. And for the sets that you mentioned, like with Azurite Sea specifically, it was a seafaring set, and it just made perfect sense for them to have that sketchbook out and be drawing what they're seeing, and basically capturing those moments in time within the sketchbook. And that's how we extended that part of the narrative. And here we're doing that in the same way, very similarly at least, right? Where we know that it's a spooky set, and we know that there are detectives all around, and we're seeing these moments of either fright or further detection happening, but it's under the lens of, now we're taking that spookiness a little bit further and really adding a little bit more edge to the level of spookiness that we weren't able to do for the main part of the set.
And overall, one of my biggest takeaways, as usual, is just how many people and different skill sets come together to bring a set of Lorcana to life. From the narrative team, to the game design team, to the visual development team, all of these people work in concert to make this game as magical and rich as it is. This description from Edgar really brought it all together for me. He starts out talking about some of the pieces and people and skills that came together at the start of the set, and he ends with a bit of the finished product and some really interesting narrative nuggets that we can take with us as we begin to explore the Inkwell Caverns.
We go back to a lot of the elements that go into making these sets. There's a narrative team that supports us in a big way by coming up with that general theme of what they want to see. And also our world building team. There's a lot of previs work that goes into the building of these locations. And in this case, I was able to go back through our archives and find a bunch of art that had been unused but was just gorgeous. And I was able to pull elements from those pieces and create what you hopefully will discover through the cards that we're releasing in the Whispers in the Well. Creating this underground cavernous world, and even the entrance to that world, which is that abandoned laboratory.
Fascinating. So that's how you get into the caves underneath the Illuminary.
Yeah. So that's part of the narrative that should be playing out, where you start off with some of our main characters, Nick and Judy, and they're exploring they find this abandoned laboratory, and they, within the inkwell, where the ink is actually synthesized or uh, created, and they find these clues, and they're like, what is going on here, and there's a card, beautiful card. I believe Grease did that one, and he shows this arch, and now there's a doorway and another card, and you start to see, put together the clues as to like how is this world being explored. And that is the first place where the story kind of unfolds, right? Where you have these detectives going in, doing their thing, exploring, and then they find, by accident or otherwise, right, by design, they find this doorway into yet another world that lives beneath the Inkwell Caverns.
And if you want to explore the Inkwell Caverns in the Bitterwood with Judy Hobson, Nick Wilde, and the other Glimmers, Whispers in the Well is out now at your local game store, so you can go check it out and let us know down below what your favorite narrative details, art, and design is from this set. Seriously, we really want to know. And make sure you subscribe for more fun videos and all that stuff.
Remember to grab those magnifying glasses and follow the Whispers to your local game shop this November 7th, and we'll see you there.